The boardroom walls had barely cooled from the storm of the previous week. Lucien Cross had faced betrayal, lost the woman he once loved, and yet, as the city's whispers grew louder, his gaze only grew sharper. Episode 8 begins in the quiet before the next tempest. The dawn light spilled through the tall windows of Lucien's modest apartment, a contrast to the luxury he had been born into. He sat at the edge of the bed, his fingers grazing the black onyx crescent earring that now gleamed in his left ear, the mark of a Cross Heir stepping fully into his place. The time for hiding is over. On the coffee table lay neatly stacked reports, evidence of a brewing corporate takeover. Across the city, the news cycle buzzed. Vivian Heir and Damien Voss had been seen together at yet another high-profile gala. Vivian Heir stood at the head of her company's boardroom table, her expression as poised as ever, yet the sharpness in her voice betrayed her unrest. "We'll move forward with the expansion. Damien's team will oversee the new contracts. We can't afford to be slowed down by anyone." Her eyes flickered for a moment, almost imperceptibly, toward the empty chair at the far end of the table, the one Lucien had once occupied. A board member spoke. "Miss Heir, the Cross name is resurfacing in the markets. Investors are murmuring, should we—" Vivian interrupting her coldly. "Ignore the noise. The Cross name is just a myth people cling to. We have real work to do." She sounded confident, but as the meeting adjourned, Vivian lingered alone, staring out the window, the city skyline shimmering beneath the morning sun. She had chosen her path, yet the thought of Lucien's steady gaze haunted her, the way he had stood by her in the early days before ambition eclipsed everything. At a quiet corner cafe, Adrian Cross leaned casually against the table as Lucien arrived. The two cousins greeted each other not as distant relatives, but as allies forged by challenge. Adrian greeted him and said, "Damien's moving faster than we thought. He's consolidating suppliers and trying to corner the logistics sector. I've heard he's also whispering to some of our family's more restless uncles." Lucien's eyes calm and steady. "Let him. A viper shows its fangs before it strikes. I know you've endured worse, but this time you'll need to step into the open. The family council's beginning to ask questions about when you'll stop playing the humble analyst," Adrian said with a hint of concern. Lucien played with his earring. "When the time is right, I'll show them what I've built." That evening, Vivian sat in her penthouse, the city lights painting silver lines across her face. Damien stood by the balcony speaking confidently about their next moves. "Soon, Heir Industries will be at the center of the new energy market, and with your influence and my reach, we'll make sure Lucien Cross fades into irrelevance." Vivian forced a small smile, but felt a hollow weight in her chest. She reached for a glass of wine, her fingers trembling just slightly. Vivian muttered quietly, almost to herself, "Lucien never needed to promise me anything. He just showed up." Damien turning at her sharply. "What was that?" "Nothing, just thinking about the market." But as Damien returned to his phone call, Vivian's eyes drifted toward the skyline again. Somewhere out there, she knew Lucien was still fighting, and a part of her wondered, had she chosen power only to lose something far more valuable? The next morning, chaos erupted at one of Cross Corporation's subsidiary logistics hubs. An anonymous tip had brought inspectors and media swarming the docks, accusing the company of illicit trade practices. Lucien arrived in person, his presence calm amid the frenzy. A reporter shoving his microphone, "Mr. Cross, how do you respond to these allegations?" Lucien stood steady and answered directly, "By proving the truth, we have nothing to hide." While reporters clamored, Lucien walked the site, uncovered a trail of forged documents, and with decisive authority exposed the orchestrated sabotage, evidence pointing back to shell companies tied to Damien Voss. Inspector reported to Lucien, "We'll need to follow up on this." Lucien answered with a knowing smile, "Please do. Sunlight is the best disinfectant." That night, headlines blazed across the city. Lucien Cross exposes sabotage at major logistics hub. Cross Heir steps into the spotlight. Investors began to murmur, not just about the scandal, but about the man who had quietly built a reputation for precision and fairness. For the first time in years, the Cross name returned to the business pages, not as a relic of the past, but as a rising force. In the quiet of his apartment, Lucien stood by the window, gazing at the night sky. His fingers brushed the black onyx crescent earring, and he let out a slow breath. If they want a war, they'll see what a Cross can do. Across the city, Vivian sat alone in her penthouse, her phone buzzing with messages from Damien about their next move. But her eyes were fixed on the news report playing silently on the screen, Lucien's calm, poised face as he addressed the press. The image stirred something in her, a flicker of memory she had tried to bury. The late nights at the office, his quiet support, his ability to stand steady even when the world seemed to sway. For the first time, regret's shadow touched Vivian Hale.
Thank you for sharing this chapter with us at Velvet Chapters Brew. Comment, like, and subscribe to see where the next page takes us.